provide much value here, because Brian can easily ignore a few hits from it and then kill him by going ultimate with Jace, entreat the Angels, or any other number of ways.
Yeah, so a key swords to plowshares for an early drop will be very powerful for Brian. And we are underway. Sam will be able to try to play a tempo game. He won the die roll, went first, and starts with Delver of Secrets.
That's the start that he needs here. Now, sometimes the Miracles deck can get tripped up by just having too much expensive stuff in its hand. So if, Brian gets off to a slow start here, it's possible Sam can really leverage this Delver and steal the game before Brian's able to do much of anything.
Yeah, as you saw there, Brian went for a turn 1 Sensei's Divining Top. It's pretty much the engine to his deck, but it met a daze from Sam.
Definitely worth countering even this early in the game. Just makes all of Brian's Miracles so potent over the course of the game.
Not the God draw for Sam. He didn't flip the Delver yet, so Brian knocked down to 19 off the Delver. And we may just have some mana development on his side.
Yeah, really important for Sam to answer this or to flip this Delver rather as quickly as he possibly can here. He has a Wasteland in hand that's going to tackle Brian's Tundra, and he can start putting some real pressure on him.
And Divining Top played for Brian. This is, I almost want to say, one of the most important cards, is the most important card in the Miracles deck. Basically, the game plan of it seems often to be just to 1-for-1 and then slowly make its draws better than its opponents, and Divining Top is really the engine that does that.
It's also just so powerful in concert with your Miracle cards too. That's another thing. The Miracle cards can be fine cards to draw periodically, but they're pretty high variance, and you want to wait till the opportune time. Divining Top allows you to do that stuff at instant speed as well, so just interacts so powerfully with so many elements of Brian's deck.
All right, we're going to see a Brainstorm here from Sam before the top resolves, but then the top does resolve. Sam did set up, however, a Delver flip. It'll be Lightning Bolt off the top, and he now has an Insectile Aberration.
So good start here for Sam.
Yeah, not too much left in Brian's hand. Brian has a Terminus, a Jace, and some lands, so presumably he's going to try to Brainstorm that Terminus on top to answer the Delver of Secrets, or maybe find another one.
And Sam may be willing to, actually use counter spells on cards like Brainstorm at this stage of things.
Yeah, we see Braun-Duin down to 16. Sam has the option to Wasteland here. He's going to go ahead and play it. We'll see if he goes for the Waste on Tundra, but he does not.
I think he's just going to wait to see, let Brian set his deck, maybe trick Brian into thinking he's not going to use his Wasteland. I imagine Sam's going to use this at the end of the turn.
Yeah, huge top 3 for Brian. He had a Brainstorm, a Counterbalance, and a Volcanic Island.
And these Brainstorms very powerful for Brian, as you alluded to earlier, trying to get that Terminus back on top of his deck to answer this Delver.
And now there's a second concern. As you saw, Sam is going for the Wasteland. Brian now left without white mana to Miracle the Terminus.
Yeah. He does have a backup Tundra, but he is at risk of this getting blown up as well.
He's going to go ahead, tap 2, and go for Counterbalance, so trying to establish the lock. It doesn't answer the board, but helps answer the future threats that Sam could make. I think Sam's going to have to force that, and he's going to do it pitching another Delver.
Which is really interesting. It means that he had something in his hand that he wanted to hold up instead. Or he just didn't want to put a second creature onto the board.
And Sam, another Wasteland, is going to take care of that Tundra. Again, hit Brian down to 13, and he is playing that tempo game. He has cast 2 counter spells, 2 Wastelands. He's keeping Brian off his control package.
It's rare to see Miracles blown up by Wastelands like this. Brian's list here, 4 islands, 2 plains, and a variety of fetch lands to go get those basics, but he did just happen to draw 2 Tundras in his opening hand, and that's given Sam an angle to execute his tempo game.
We'll see if he can go with it. Right now, a main phase Brainstorm from Brian. His land for the turn was Scalding Tarn. So we'll draw Volcanic Island, Flooded Strand, and Force of Will. I'm going to shuffle at least some of those back. He has a lot of lands. Remember, he right now has a Terminus, a Force, a Jace, and 3 lands. See what he decides to get rid of. It might just be a bunch of lands. Looks like he's going to shuffle away land and Terminus. And that surprised me. Why would you want to shuffle away a Terminus at this point?
I am not totally sure. I mean, Brian can set up the trigger and then fetch and find white mana. Unless he is he out of Tundras? No, he has 1 Tundra left in his deck.
So, yeah, but then he loses his top to do that, right?
Yes.
So, yeah, on Sam's turn, he could tap the top, draw the card, put the Miracle trigger on the stack, then crack fetch land for white. Brian down to 10. Maybe he's not committed to cracking Scalding Tarn yet. He's going to go ahead and... Oh, he's just going to he's going to naturally Miracle the Terminus next turn.
Yeah, okay.
looks like it to be the game plan. So yeah, then he'll miracle it and fetch them.
Although this does involve Brian getting a Tundra here. He, of course, can't get a Plains with the Scalding Tarn.
How good of a read would have it been if Sam had... Yeah, and Sam... I was going to say, if Sam wasted the Scalding Tarn and then he makes the read.
Yeah.
This is before Brian draws a card. For not... Brian set up that Terminus, and Sam is just stone calling that he set up a Terminus.
Yeah, and we've seen Sam did this in the match we had earlier today against Joel Lisette, where he's using his Wastelands pretty aggressively to break up shuffles in spots where he feels like something has been set up, and he has sniffed this one out. This is a pretty incredible play here from Sam.
These are the kind of plays that separate the good players from the very good players.
Yeah.
You know, and you can tell, and Sam knows he's got to be happy with himself. He knows based on Brian's reaction that he hit.
Yeah.
And now the price is that Brian's going to lose his Divining Top. So he draws a card with the top. It's Terminus. He miracles. He's going to fetch in response. Delver goes on the bottom. So Brian losing his Divining Top.
And this is forcing Brian to now play a pretty honest game for the rest of the game. Pinned on resources, no Divining Top.
Yep. And then he gets to draw for the turn's end.
Yeah.
That said, it's not actually that hostile of a board for Brian right now.
No, he's doing fine. I mean, Sam hasn't found much in the way of threats here. And so Brian can still win just by resolving this Jace next turn. He drew a Vendilion Click on the previous turn. Brian with plenty of ways to still try to win this game.
Yeah, and we'll see whether or not Sam can make another threat, and he cannot right now. So Brian just going to get to continue to develop his mana base. He does have Jace, Force of Will, and blue card. If he's willing to expend his whole hand, he can try to just slam Jace here.
Jace is, I don't think necessarily the preferred route against a deck with Bolt in it. He may just want to do Vendilion Click, see what's going on, and then go from there.
Sure. Sam, the draw was Stoneforge Mystic, so he has a possible play here. And remember, Brian not too scared of Stoneforge Mystic, as he can let it resolve and then Vendilion Click away the equipment that Sam gets.
Or use Jace and start unsummoning things, or just overpower it with Entreat at some point. There's a lot of ways for Brian to not really care about Stoneforge Mystic. It's one of the strongest elements about Blue-White Miracles in my mind is you care about Stoneforge Mystic pretty much the least of any of the honest decks of the format.
All right, with that fetch on the stack, Brian's going to go ahead and make the Vendilion Click. So now he sees Umezawa's Jete, Force of Will, Lightning Bolt, and Stoneforge Mystic.
And this is great timing here by Brian here, doing this Vendilion Click at a spot where Sam cannot cast the Stoneforge Mystic. Obviously, Sam was trying to do something for 2 mana on his main phase. That almost certainly means Stoneforge Mystic. So this is great timing here from Brian.
Now he has to decide whether or not he cares about Stoneforge Mystic. There's a chance that he does not. You know, if Sam makes Stoneforge Mystic, Brian can simply make a Jace. The one worry is that Lightning Bolt is pretty good here.
I think this is a path that really allows Brian to go play Jace plus it, and now I'm outside of range of a lot of things.
Yeah, Brian ends up taking nothing from his hand. He lets Sam get everything, not wanting to draw him into more land.
Yeah.
You see another land drawn by Brian.
And I would not be surprised to see Brian try to land Jace this turn.
Yeah, well, he knows the coast is clear. See whether or not he decides it's time for it.
This feels like a good spot to me. And if Brian's cracking this fetch land here, I think.
That is what he's doing. He's going to go ahead and crack them both. It puts himself down to 7. Cracking them both means he's going to play the Jace, probably, and this. Well, his hand's pretty good. I believe he has a top in it as well.
Yeah.
So he's just going to go ahead and play both of them out.
And Jace plus Divine Top gives Brian a lot of access to do stuff next turn, where he finds one of his haymakers, whether it's something like Terminus once, you know, Sam's deployed the equivalent, or something like Entreat.
Yeah, and because that Lightning Bolt, we expect to see Jace plus here to Fate Seal Sam.
Yeah.
He's actually going to go ahead and unsummon the Stoneforge Mystic, so allowing himself to lose the Jace, but in return it will take It'll cost Sam, if he doesn't draw land, it'll cost him his entire turn.
It's a big tempo play here, and Brian's just kind of taking a different line. If he wants to replay Stoneforge Mystic, there's no equipment left for Sam to get in his deck. And if he bolts here, then he has no answer to the Vendilion Click.
Yeah, if Sam had drawn a land, he could have done both, but he did not.
Yeah.
He drew Brainstorm. Brian's got to be happy about that. If you're Sam, I think even if you're going to bolt here, you want to, or play Mystic, I think you Brainstorm first to try to hit your land drop.
Yeah, Sam needs to get a little bit more mana in play to unlock a lot of his hand here. So if you had some other follow-up, if you, say, had a Delver Secrets in your hand, then I could see just playing in Bolt and Delver. But as it stands, I think Sam wants to dig for a land drop.
Yeah, first of all, he's going to take care of Jace. He can't let Brian get another Jace activation off. And it could be he's deciding between bolting Jace and bolting Brian. Yeah, he thought for a second there, opted for the Planeswalker. And not going to go fishing for the land. And Sam will drop to 12. Brian, a 5-turn clock there. More importantly, that top with all this mana, it's a pretty big threat now that Brian has Force plus blue card in hand.
Yeah, Sam's at some risk of losing this game in the short term just to the board. And he's also at risk of losing the game in the long term to this Divining Top.
All right, Brainstorm cast. Brian just hard counters it with Force of Will. Did have 5 mana at this point. Sam casts Stoneforge Mystic and does not find an equipment.
Yep. Jite in hand, and the Batterskull he got a little while ago, so.
All right, so Brian's going to go ahead and upkeep Divining Top here. He sees a pair of lands and a Terminus. I don't think he wants the Terminus on this board, but fortunately for him, one of the lands is a fetch land.
Brian has taken a very aggressive line to this game.
Yeah, I'm a little worried if he fetches again, because that'll put him down to 6 life. And suddenly, he's getting close to being in bolt range. He probably can afford to still go to 6.
Well, the game's also, the game has now gotten to a spot where the Batterskull in Sam's hand is a meaningful card. Brian was committing so much to this damage race plan that now, instead of Batterskull being kind of this innocuous thing he can fend off as he's trying to go ultimate with Jace, it is a cause for concern.
So you're talking about back unsummoning with that Jace as opposed to Fate Sealing.
Correct.
That we're back to that line, that play. And that certainly, I think, was the deciding play as to what line Brian wanted to take.
Yeah, he has 2 paths he can take that game, try to shields up and win with Jace, or try to play a tempo game and win the Vendilion Click. He decided the second path, and now this Batterskull has the chance of being a really meaningful card in the way this game's going to shape up.
Yeah, Sam has drawn his 4th land as well. 1 card remains in Brian's hand. He does have a fetch land and Divining Top, so he, if needed, has access to more cards. But we will see if Sam could just play Jite, equip it, and swing.
Which is quite fine here as well.
If it connects, it's great for Sam. I don't know if he would expect it to connect right now. And we'll see if he does it. All right, Jite is cast. And not even going to spin the top. Brian will just let that resolve.
I think he may have floated the Terminus here, and he has another click in his hand. So that may be the path now. Because when Stoneforge Mystic is no longer in play, then you care much less about the Batterskull.
So yeah, he's going to equip it here and swing. So yeah, top can Terminus here, and Brian can end step V-click again.
Take away the Batterskull, and now can win the game, threaten to win the game quickly, and not be as concerned about the Batterskull in hand. Again, a lot of different paths. Given that Brian has gone aggressive, it feels like a really large cost to let himself get hit with this Jite.
Yeah, I don't think he can let himself get hit with the Jite. If he didn't have a different plan for this Jite, I would have thought that he would have dug for an answer with this top.
Correct. Sam has just done a really excellent job this game. I mean, I know I've said it a couple times now, but he's just been so skilled navigating these games into this kind of spot where he's been out-resourced the whole way, but is somehow still fighting here.
Force of Will and Batterskull, the 2 remaining cards in Pardee's hand. We'll see whether Brian chooses to take any of them. I would think he'll take Batterskull.
Well, if he attacks Sam down to 5, Sam draws a land.
Plays Batterskull.
Now, yeah, then it does matter.
Yeah.
But also giving Sam a look at Source of Plowshares or Lightning Bolt is really risky as well.
He's going to go ahead and get rid of the Batterskull, give Sam a new card, and now he will take his turn. It looks good for Brian right now. So he puts Sam down to 5. He just needs to, he only needs his 5 for a little bit longer.
Yeah.
Plays top, spins it. The third card there is unknown. He knew about the 2 lands. I put them all back. I think it was yet another land.
Yeah, it looks like 3 lands here, so if Sam has found a bolt or a plow, or even just a creature, Brian is in potentially some danger. He has a lot of looks with this Divining Top. Keep that in mind. So he has to miss quite a few times for things to get really out of control, but
going to go ahead and crack that Flooded Strand for another Plains. Remember, this resets the top of his deck, so we'll get to look 3 more deep. Can he find an insurance policy against Sam's draws? That's the question here.
And there is another Vendilion Click in that top there, and that is a lot of insurance. Because Brian running out of ways to win the game is also potentially a risk.
Yeah. All right, Sam's going to go ahead and ponder. And he needs to find, I think, like you said before, he needs to find a creature. Something that he can put GT on, something to stop this 2-turn clock that's on the other side of the battlefield.
It's tough because Brian's top spin was so good there. There's 2 plows and a click amongst his top 3. So he has insurance against a creature and an insurance against removal spell. If he finds True Name Nemesis, there's 1 copy of his main deck. Then things potentially get ugly for Brian.
Looks like he did not. He kept the 3 cards, drew 1, and then passed the turn back. This does mean that he's happy with the card he got off ponder. Yeah. So if you're Brian, you have to think, what are the cards that Sam could do? And it's going to be a Swords to Plowshares for the Vendilion Click.
Yeah.
That seems fair. Removal spells, probably the easiest way for Sam to stay alive.
Is he going to be able to fend off this 3rd click, though?
If he can, things may even look good for Sam here, however. Maybe not. He's still facing down a Divining Top, and that, as we know, that can be really powerful in Brian's deck.
The 1 True Name Nemesis gives Sam a pretty big draw. Sam, of course, with a variety of redraws here, and if Brian's clicking, that gives him assurance this turn against True Name Nemesis, but that's the big one.
Let's see here. This is during Sam's draw step that we're going to go ahead and V-click.
I think we may be in Sam's upkeep.
Okay, during Sam's upkeep, but Sam did have Force plus blue card in hand.
Yep.
Yeah, it was an upkeep. He didn't even want Sam. Correctly played around the Force of Will, however, didn't matter. Sam already had Force plus blue card. We see land, and hilariously, the Caracas now in Brian's hand. So, unfortunately, all 3 of his copies of Vendilion Click are already in the yard. Those are his legendary creatures.
And you see a Council's Judgment there, and that might solve this game for Brian here, as now even the 1 copy of True Name Nemesis can't really steal it for Sam anymore.
As Sam plays the 5th land, points out that there's a Batterskull in his deck. Perhaps that it was on the bottom.
So Brian slowly, he's stabilized things. He's really just looking for something to finish it off, but Sam's still with some threatening draws.
Yeah, we'll see what he goes for here, what he can draw. Drew a card, keeps it face down, wasn't a threat yet. We see, though, Brian hasn't found anything either, just creature removal. So he has a pair of Swords to Plowshares in hand. Spin again, still looking for action. And there we go, it is Stoneforge Mystic.
I don't think Brian's doing anything with that Stoneforge this turn because he wants to keep the Divining Top, but I think next turn you're going to see him go get a Batterskull.
Now the question is he getting that Council's Judgment? As you said, he may want to float that on top of his deck. Like, he may not want to give up on that card.
Maybe.
He actually kept he drew Council's Judgment for the turn. At the top of his deck has the other 2 Swords to Plowshares on it, but he keeps Stoneforge Mystic on top.
He doesn't need to move just yet.
No, and this is the patience. He has found his win con, but he's waiting to draw a couple more permission spells before he goes for it.
Just pieces of insurance, that's the big thing,
Right. He is still weak to, well, you have to be a lot of running lightning bolts. But yeah, he is closing out Sam's outs. And we'll see what he can do here.
Yeah, it looks like Brian is finally ready to move.
All right, Stoneforge Mystic hits the table for Brian. It's going to go ahead and search out, he had most likely a copy of Batterskull. And there you see Batterskull on Brian's side. And now he has a win con at the ready. Remember, Sam's only at 3s. That'll be 1 hit from Batterskull. And Sam with a lot of dead cards right now. Cards like Daze, which are not particularly good anymore.
Yeah, it's tough. Once you get past the initial turns of the game, those cards really diminish in value. Sam came pretty close, this game to making that those kind of tempo plays work, but fell a little bit short now, as you mentioned. Just a lot of spell pierces and dazes against Brian's just much more impactful draws.
All right. We'll see right now Sam shuffling off the Ponder, a good sign for Brian. Remember, Brian with a slew of Swords to Plowshares still in his hand.
Yeah, it's tough for Sam really to couple together. He's not really got Brian anywhere near bolt range, and the threats don't do a lot of work for him either at this point.
Yeah, the last threat that he could have that worked was True Name Nemesis, but Brian did keep the answer to that. And Sam will get one more turn to do something. Brian has Force of Will in hand. He's just going to pass, and believe we'll be moving on to the next game here. And step Brian's going to put Batterskull into play. Can Sam do anything? No, pair of dazes. So
yeah.
Game 1 goes to Brian Braun-Duin.
Shows a hand of garbage, and Brian up a game here. As we move to the sideboard, one element that I really like about Brian's style of list here, he does something that I don't see a lot of Miracles players do. He's got 2 Stoneforge Mystics in his deck. Sometimes you see that, sometimes you don't, but whatever. What's really awesome to me is he has 2 more copies of Stoneforge Mystic and a second copy of Batterskull. So we can play this attrition-based game of just wearing someone out of resources. A lot of times people will bring in 1 Wear Tear or 1 Crozane Crypt to fight over the Batterskull, and having a second copy increases the value of your Stoneforge Mystic so much and just gives you another really powerful card as the game goes late. 2 copies of Meddling Mage, a Sword of Feast and Famine, and Lightning Tutor, a Wear Tear. 3 copies of Pyroblast, a Pithing Needle, and Rest in Peace. I think the 3 Pyroblasts and the Wear Tear will come in as well.
And now, interestingly, he has 2 Stoneforge Mystics in the main, but he has the ability to board up to 4 right now. What is the kind of matchup, it's an interesting board plan. Is this the kind of matchup where he wants to do that?
I think it's 2 kind of matchups. There's one where your opponent is really soft to Stoneforge Mystic. That's the easiest one. And then any matchup where you think Stoneforge Mystic may or may not be the best card, but the game is going to go long, and I want to have access to just more 2-for-1s and additional Batterskulls. And I think this matchup is kind of a mixture of the 2. Sam can definitely lose to an early Stoneforge Mystic. He has protection, he has bolts and plows, but some percentage of the time he's just going to straight up lose. And the other side of it is the game has the potential to go very long, and then Brian just has much more power in his deck than Sam does.
So it's still a 2 Stoneforge matchup, or possibly going up?
I think he may go all the way up to 4.
All right. On Sam's side of the board, he boards in a lot of the same cards in the matchup. He also has his own Pyroblasts. He has a Spell Pierce as well, which you'd have to assume will be used. He has another copy of True Name Nemesis, which is okay but not great in the matchup. Brian does have a decent number of ways to deal with True Name. That's what I think he'll still keep it. Other than that, he has additional Grim Lavamancers. He can board in more threats.
Yeah, I think the Meddling Mage does some real work against Brian's deck. There's some spots where Sam is only going to care about Terminus or only care about Entreat, and he just needs to be more aggressive in the matchup in general. We saw what happens when the game goes long. Sam doesn't have nearly the same power in his deck that Brian does, so he needs to remove, I think, some amount of his permission or some of his less efficient threats and get in things like Meddling Mage, maybe even Grim Lavamancers as well.
When you think about it, at the end of the day, these 2 decks have a huge amount of overlap. They're playing... It's not a mirror match, but it's not that far from one. And we saw Brian pull away there because, in the end, the differences in their deck are that Sam's playing Delver of Secrets, Lightning Bolts, and Dazes, whereas Brian's playing Counterbalances, Terminuses, and Jace.
It's Wasteland and Delver of Secrets against basic lands and Jace the Mind Sculptor. That's kind of how I would define the 2 decks. Someone's trying to prevent their opponent from really taking a meaningful game action. That's Sam. The other one is trying to have broad-based answers to anything the opponent is up to and win with powerful sources of card advantage, and that's Brian.
Yeah, we'll see how it goes on in game 2. You know, and at the end there, Brian was able to ride cards like Divining Top and Jace, where Sam was drawing dazes. So Sam's going to need a fast opening, which seems like it might be difficult because that was a decently fast hand from Sam. Remember, that was a turn 1 Delver into Daze.
Turn 1 Delver into Daze, and his 2 Wastelands were live early in the game. Now, sometimes you'll see Blue-White-Red Delver be able to Wasteland a Miracle's opponent on turn 6 or 7, but it's really rare to see 2 Wastelands get fired off early on in the game. It happened because, you know, Brian happened to draw 2 of his 3 Tundras, but that was a really powerful opening for Sam, and it was still not enough to get that game. Your Delver is going to get into play. It's going to be alive for several turns. Brian is not going to have Swords of Plowshare, and you're going to get to Wasteland him twice in the early turns. If you ask Sam, is that the kind of game you want to play? He would say absolutely, but was still not enough to get it done.
Yeah, a timely Terminus from Brian eventually swung things his way. And we're underway. Sam, this time no turn 1 Delver, but he has a turn 1 Ponder. Just about as good. We'll see what he goes for here. He does have the Daze to back it up as well. So he has an insurance policy on Sensei's Divining Top.
And you can see Brian's gone into really cheap cards for this matchup. The Swords of Plowshares, of course, were already in his deck, but you see an Engineered Explosives, you see a Pyroblast, just trying to make sure he shores up his early game because that's where Sam has an edge.
Sam plays a second land. No spells yet. Both players are just trading lands at the moment. That's got to be favoring Brian. You do see a lot of cheap spells, though. Stoneforge Mystic, Brainstorm, Pyroblast, Swords to Plowshares, Engineered Explosives. His mana curve is pretty lean.
And what I really like about this is he has 2 cards in Pyroblast and Engineered Explosives, which answers True Name Nemesis without being exclusively answers to True Name Nemesis. It's not some super narrow, you know, Tempest of Light type or Day of Light type of card or whatever the case may be. These have utility even if Sam's draws doesn't involve True Name Nemesis, and is very good if his draw does.
Yeah, Sam's third land was a Wasteland. Can't use it yet because Brian just has fetches and basics, but imagine we'll see that at some point here. But Sam doesn't have a threat yet. We'll see what happens. Brian is actually the first person to commit something to the board. That's Stoneforge Mystic.
And this is just a really tough start here for Sam. If he has Vendilion Click in exactly the spot, he's still, you know, got a shot to have a good shot at winning this game, but getting onto the board this slowly is tough.
He's going to Vendilion Click before Brian finds an equipment. And we'll see whether that gets Red Blasted or Swords from Brian's side. His danger is that if he takes down this red mana, he could get True Name Nemesis from Sam. However, if Sam has, say, a Daze and a True Name, Brian doesn't have a play around it anyway.
Yeah. I think that if I was going to answer this, I would Pyroblast, because you have to get a Volcanic Island here to be able to cast it, and then you don't have access to it for the remainder of the game, potentially.
Yeah, also, if you were to Swords it, you'd have to get a white mana, which means you would not be able to have all 3 of your colors.
Right. But I guess Brian supposes that my hand is redundant enough answers to Vendilion Click. I don't need to fight it right now, and he's just going to let it in.
Seems fine. So we'll see. The one thing is he's giving a lot of information away now. We'll see what Sam takes. Brian has since added a second Swords and a Vendilion Click. Yeah, and it's hard to take something from this hand, mainly because all the cards do the same thing. Sam's going to take the second copy of Swords to Plowshares.
Yeah, just such a redundant hand from Brian. It seemed like really the only place to carve a hole there would be with the Engineered Explosives, but even that.
And we do have a little bit of an update. In our other feature match, we have our first player at 8-0. That's Rudy Brixa defeating Harry Corvesi. So Brixa moves to 8-0. He's one of the 2 undefeated players. He will be joining one of these 2 players in undefeated for day 1, where he'll most likely play them in the first round of day 2.
That was a really interesting card that Brian drew off of the Vendilion Click trigger there. He found a Caracas, which means that now he can concern himself much less with the Vendilion Click, because he always has the opportunity to unsummon and back to Sam's hand. You see Sam fighting a lot of resources over the Stoneforge Mystic, trying to get some pressure into play with this click, but this Caracas is going to set Sam back potentially quite far.
Yeah, the ability to just unsummon that 3-drop, now that Sam has picked up 2 lands, it's really harsh. But Sam's going to get the first turn here. We'll see what he can do with it. Maybe he can get another threat onto the board before Brian starts bouncing his click. He's going to waste Brian off the Tundra, swing with V-click. And if you're Sam, you have to be feeling pretty good about this board.
Yeah, but again, this Caracas is, you know, I like the Wasteland play there from Sam quite a bit because he knows that Brian is a little choked on lands and missing colors and all that. But the fact that he no longer has a Wasteland to fight this Caracas is a little tough for Sam.
Yeah, in Sam's defense, right now Brian is on all white mana. Sam's gonna swing. Brian, simple tap and bounces it.
Oh, Sam's play is absolutely correct based on the hand that he saw. Yeah. And even if he knew that Caracas was in his hand, cutting Brian off of blue mana still might be too important.
All right, Delver of Secrets. This is a little bit of a cheaper threat now for Sam, one that can't be Caracased. So he'll try to get a clock going again. We'll see whether or not Brian can get out of his land dilemma in time. And right now he has not.
The upshot to all this, which is working in Brian's favor, is that nothing too bad is happening right now. You know, he can answer the Vendilion Click. He can, you know, he has plenty of spot removal spells for this Delver of Secrets and potentially other threats as well. So he has time to find his mana.
Yeah. He's going to go for Engineered Explosives on 1. This was actually an interesting decision. So Sam can daze it, and then if he flips the Delver, he gets around Engineered Explosives. Brian could have EE'd on 0 as well if he wanted just to stop a flipped Delver. Turns out it happens on 1. Brian's going to tap out. He'll just use that as a 3-mana kill spell for Delver.
I think the problem with, if he sets the explosives to 0, then Sam just chooses not to flip his Delver.
Right.
And attacks for 1. Not that that's too significant, but well, why not just kill it forever if you have the option to do so?
Yeah, Sam with hits his 3rd land, and now he will play another Delver of Secrets.
So the Vendilion Click is online, but critically for Brian, he has found a blue source of mana.
All right, so Tundra will activate the Brainstorm in his hand. He's going to go ahead and swords the Delver. As we recall, Brian's hand did have a lot of permission in it. He is building his way also toward a Batterskull, only 1 mana away right now.
Yeah.
And the swords is going to be forced by Sam, pitching that Vendilion Click.
No surprise to see Sam here get rid of that click in the face of Brian's Caracas.
And, you know, this is kind of one of the dangers of this matchup from the Delver side, is that he has to fight over threats like this, but Brian just has a lot of 1-mana removal. And it, you know, Sam will expend resources to fight over this Delver, only to have it be Pyroblasted a turn later.
It is, you know, it's all about wearing down the blue-white-red Delver's defenses. And Brian post-board has so many cheap cards that allow him to do so.
You see Sam does not flip his Delver. Looks like Brian's going to Brainstorm. And that one's going to happen. So he hits a Preordain, another island, and a Terminus. So
that Terminus is a really big draw here for Brian. Again, just another way to fend off whatever pressure Sam is able to cobble together here.
Yeah, Terminus really just another 1-for-1 removal spell.
Yeah.
But it costs 1, just like all the other ones, which makes the deck very efficient.
But he can wait a couple turns on it. He can set that Terminus 2 cards down, be willing to take a hit or 2 here, and try to squeeze out a little bit more from this Terminus.
Yeah, Brian goes to 15 off just the Delver of Secrets. Sam passes back. And it looks like, I think he set up the Terminus. He did, indeed.
And I think this might be because he's found an island. Now Brian just wants to play this Vendilion Click, protect it with Caracas, and start pressuring Sam's life total.
Right, he has that. He also has option to Batterskull later on if he gets a 6th land. So he can use V-Click to clear the way for Batterskull, more or less. And waits for Sam to draw the card and then jumps down with Vendilion Click.
And this is a great sculpting here from Brian. Gets to play Click with Caracas up, gets to see if the coast is clear for his Batterskull, and if not, do other things with his mana. He's got plenty of things to do.
We'll see, that might get hit by a Red Blast. If you're Sam, I think you want to answer this just because of how powerful it's going to be with that Vendilion Click.
Yeah.
Sam's going to Brainstorm first. This is with V-Click on the stack.
Yeah, Sam's going to find a counterspell for this because otherwise the Caracas just protects the Vendilion Click.
Yeah, it may be that he already had an answer. We'll see. Looks like he has 1 red card. It may be a Lightning Bolt. It may be a Red Blast.
But this feels force of will worthy for me in this spot. And that's really the thing about the post-board games. It feels like Brian has so many cards that you would all describe as force of will worthy, and Sam has only so many force of wills to go around.
Yeah, well, Brian's just grinding him down because Sam's going to have to force of will to take care of Brian's threats, whereas Brian just pays 1 mana to take care of Sam's. And
yeah.
So eventually, Sam runs out of cards, Brian sticks a Divining Top, and then one of these threats goes unanswered.
To his credit, Sam is doing the best he can with the resources he has. I mean, he's played a very sharp match, and we saw him beat Joe Lissette earlier, who's also playing Miracles, but does not feel like the easiest matchup to me, especially when the games get into this kind of spot.
All right, and we'll see. So that does get forced. Sam's going to go ahead and crack a fetch line. Remember, he did just complete a Brainstorm, so wants to reset the top of his deck. And now we are in his main phase, and it's going to be Stoneforge Mystic.
I mean, if you had any cards left over for Sam, you would want him to be this, right? A Stoneforge Mystic to get a really powerful threat, a Wasteland to set back Brian's development even further. He can attack Brian's double blue if he wants to try to keep him off of something like Jace. He can go after the Caracas if he thinks that Brian's up to some other legendary creature shenanigans. But Sam, again, really out-resourced, but doing everything that he possibly can here to keep up with what Brian's doing.
Yep, he's going to take Brian off that second blue mana, as you'd mentioned. So Jace offline, another Vendilion Click offline. And more importantly, that now Batterskull's offline too.
Yeah.
So Brian's going to have to preordain, try to find something else. This is preordain a 1 of. He has a Pyroblast and a Wear Tear. As they're both red cards, I don't imagine he'll keep either.
Yeah, I feel like these got to both go to the bottom here. He needs mana, and red mana specifically.
And draw was counterbalance. So another double blue card, that Wasteland on Tundra, hitting Brian once again.
Yep.
And Sam passes the turn, no land drop. He's going to be content sneaking in an equipment at the end of the turn. And we'll see what Brian does. He now has his third color online. This is Scalding Tarn. He's going to pass the turn. And Brian has a response.
Yeah, Sam decided not to Stoneforge Mystic in the Batterskull on his own turn, playing around something like Terminus. But now Brian has drawn a land here, and in response to the Stoneforge Mystic activation, he's going to be able to Vendilion Click the Batterskull out of Sam's hand.
Yeah, a little, either a calculated risk or a misstep. I think it was, yeah, he was playing around you're right, sweepers instead of playing around Vendilion Click, and he's going to pay the price for it here.
Yeah, because Brian needs to have Vendilion Click in hand and draw a blue source of mana. It's a really low percentage chance he gets there, but now Sam, with his most powerful offensive threat, dealt with.
Right, and Sam could have, oh, yeah, there's not too much he can do here. He could have used a Wasteland to push it through, I suppose. He could have waited, not let Brian fetch with Scalding Tarn.
Well, he's on the lands that he has right now. He had no way to initiate the action. He could have just untapped and drew a card if Click was on his radar, but that seems like a really big cost to pay. So
if Click is on your radar, you probably just put it in main phase instead of doing that.
Yeah.
Sam's going to waste away the Volcanic Island, but damage still done. Sam down to 1 card. He plays Delver of Secrets. And we see Brian starting to pull away. He has Stoneforge Mystic. He has Batterskull. He has Counterbalance.
Yeah, a lot of the stuff is not castable, but this is the only thing that matters here. And you see Brian has brought in the second copy of Batterskull, which leads me to believe that he's brought in the full playset of Stoneforge Mystics.
Yeah, there is 1 Wear Tear in Sam's deck, which this does play around. And looks like the control hold is taking shape. Sam has 1 last shot here. He flips his Delver into Insectile Aberration off a Force of Will. He's going to have to offer it as a trade with Vendilion Click.
And Brian, with no interest in attacking last turn, happy to play full defense, firmly believing that his Batterskull is good enough to win this game.
Yeah, Sam opting out not to attack. I don't know if he has an answer for these Batterskulls, though. Yeah. Brian draws Terminus for the turn. No interest in Miracling it.
Yeah, he has, I believe, 1 sideboarded Wear Tear, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep, he has exactly 1, so the second Batterskull is not answerable by Sam.
And now both these players just turtling up here, but that, of course, favors Brian by quite a bit. I think Sam has to shuffle his deck this turn, even though he would like to keep that Misty Rainforest for a cantrip, because he has to draw Batterskull basically this turn to keep up. And he knows the Batterskull's on the bottom of his own deck.
And a draw here. See if he has found any more action. And here comes the first of 2 Batterskulls into play for Brian. Using his own token for that.
Nice.
Yeah.
I like it. And Brian is doing this incredibly without double blue or red mana, with a hand with so many double blue and red mana spells.
Yeah, he really has been fighting this with one hand behind his back for almost the entire game.
Yeah.
Now the attacking begins. Brian swings in. He's going to offer the trade of flyers, and the germ crashes. Sam going to take the whole thing, going to 8. Brian goes up to 17. And he'll pass. Sam knocking, looking for a specific draw. I'm not sure what the draw he wants is.
Well, Batterskull still gives him a shot here. I mean, he could, you know, if he plays Batterskull, he could block. He can draw a 5th land here, put his Batterskull onto the Insectile Aberration. If Brian misses his land drops for a while, you know, it's not inconceivable for Sam to get out of this if he drew Batterskull that turn, but now the door is, I believe, completely shut.
Yeah, Sam's gonna have to start chump blocking. And there you have it, Sam with the concession. Brian Braun-Duin moving to 8-0 with a victory in 2 over Sam Pardee. He joins Rudy Brixa as one of our undefeated players here at the Invitational.